Welcome to today's Openroom University course. We're talking about something every renter should understand, which is the financial risks tied to renting and how to prepare for them. My name is Weiting, co-founder of Openroom.ca. At Openroom, we aggregate tenancy court orders across Canada and make them searchable to help both landlords and tenants better understand how tenancy disputes are resolved. We also help hold people accountable by reporting rent payment history to credit bureaus, supporting those who pay on time, and ensuring those who don't have consequences. Our work is grounded in a clear vision, a transparent and connected rental ecosystem that fairly rewards responsible members. We believe that landlords are business owners offering a service and tenants are responsible customers. Our system only works when both sides know their rights, understand their responsibilities, and have access to the tools they need to stay informed. In this session, Robbie Shifman from Consolidated Credit Canada dives into practical steps renters can take to stay financially stable while renting, from budgeting and tracking spending to building savings for emergencies, exploring debt solutions, and accessing trusted resources. We also cover what renters should know when it comes to credit bureaus like Equifax and TransUnion, and how your rental history can impact your credit profile. The mission at Consolidated Credit Canada is to help Canadians find relief from credit card debt and achieve long-term stability through financial education. So whether you're renting for the first time or have years of experience, this session will help you protect yourself and make informed decisions. Let's get started right after a message from our sponsor. As a landlord, making your properties stand out to renters is more important than ever. That's why Rentals.ca offers verified listings, a free service that confirms your identity through Persona, a trusted third-party verification provider. Verified landlords get a badge on their listings, instant posting, and up to 3 times more leads than non-verified listings. With thousands of renters searching daily, getting verified makes your property stand out as a trusted listing that gives renters peace of mind. Get verified and list for free today on Rentals.ca.
And my name is Robbie Shifman. I'm the Community Outreach Manager from Consolidated Credit Canada. And let's get rolling. So the first thing I like to talk about when I'm leading sessions around the community talking is a little bit more about Consolidated Credit Canada, because as you just heard, not everyone knows what credit counseling is. Not everyone knows why we would take the time when we offer credit counseling to do a financial education session. They want to know a little bit more about what our reasoning is behind that. So our mission at Consolidated Credit Canada is to assist individuals and families throughout the country in ending financial crises and debt management problems through both education and professional counseling. We're actually the largest nonprofit organization of our kind that is able to help Canadians in every province and territory find debt solutions to match their situation. Today, of course, we're focused in on our educational efforts. We'll talk about debt a little bit and what credit counseling is to a minimal degree. We'll get to it. But overall, the intent here is to help you be able to build up your financial confidence, your knowledge, and really be able to achieve your financial goals as best as you're able to. We all have financial goals, whether they're big ones, small ones, whether you've written them down and really thought them through, or just kind of thought about them in the back of your head. We all have those, and we want to give you a good opportunity to be able to succeed at them. But with that said, if anyone here, you yourselves or someone you know is experiencing issues related to debt, you are more than welcome to reach out to our credit counseling team. A credit counselor from an organization like ours, nonprofit, it's always a free, no obligation call to get your debt situation assessed, work on a budget together, and the credit counselor is going to help you understand what options you have, whether it makes sense for you to deal with that debt on your own or a debt solution is a good scenario for you. So they'll do that assessment. There's no upfront fees or obligations or anything to worry about there. In this session, we're going to talk about a range of topics. Again, think about those risks related to a rental situation, whether you're the tenant or you're the landlord. Budgets and tracking spending. We're going to talk about saving strategies, preparing for financial emergencies and making sure to be proactive, recognizing the risks that can lead to an emergency and kind of trying to diminish those. Debt solution options if debt is the financial problem you're dealing with, of course, and then actions you can actually take if you are running into trouble, whatever that financial emergency might be. Now, I have a question that I want you to just reflect on to yourself here. I want you to think about, how does talking about money make you feel? What emotions come to mind when you're talking about money, thinking about money, or even using money? You might go back to the previous image and think about, well, money gets me stressed out, worried, anxious. There are a lot of negative emotions related to money. Or it might get you thinking, hey, you know what? Money is really fun, exciting. I get a sense of success when I think about money, right? There's lots of positive emotions. And then there's ones in the middle. And you might have felt this already as we talk about the topic, the feeling of sort of shyness or being uncomfortable about money. Moral of the story is, there's lots of different emotions wrapped into this topic of money because it relates to our lives in such a substantial way. And as of such, there's many sayings related to money. And one I always like to mention is, money can't buy you happiness, right? And you've probably heard this before, and you're probably going, well, why is this the case? Why is this usually true? Well, studies have told us time and time again, there's just no simple, exact amount of money that you can be earning that's going to guarantee your happiness. Simply having more money does not mean you will automatically be happier. That's because it's important to talk and think about your money so we're able to meet our needs. That's the key connection. If you're able to meet your needs as best as possible through the money that you do have, you're going to have a better chance of achieving that happiness, that financial satisfaction that we all really strive for. That's the key connection, meeting your needs as best you're able. In a Canadian sense, we know that Canada is one of the wealthier countries in the world. We're lucky to call this place home. But we also know that people living in this country are not always making the best decisions with that money. We really do need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, am I making a good or bad decision when I'm regularly using my money? Now, it's interesting to highlight here some statistics that come from the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. It's within the federal government of Canada. And they do this study and they release findings from it all the time. And one particular question they ask people living in Canada is, they ask, would you describe yourself as financially knowledgeable? And wouldn't you know it, every single time they release the results, over half of adults living in Canada say time and time again, no, I would not describe myself as financially knowledgeable. So it's no wonder we're not always making good decisions. We might simply not know how to, or at least not know how to do it sustainably. So with that said, you need to ask yourself, first of all, when it comes to money, how are you valuing it? How do I and my family look at and value money? Are you more of a spender? You want to live in the moment, worry about tomorrow as it comes? Or are you someone that is always feeling stressed out with like a big purchase? They want to save, right? They feel like they're never saving enough. These values are really shaped by your experiences as you've grown up and lived your life. You've seen people use money in ways that you do like and you want to replicate. You've seen people use money in ways you don't like and you want to go in the opposite direction. These values really drive our action. And we need to ask ourselves the next question: what can I do to ensure I'm using my money responsibly, that I'm able to achieve those financial goals I mentioned before? And of course, as we take that action, we use the money, we do want to take some time to reflect, look back and go, okay, and I'm using my money in these ways. Is it getting me closer or further away from my financial goals and being successful at them? Now, with that said, we need a better understanding of how to do that reflection. And that's why we end up talking about this B word. It is budgeting. And I know it's not the most exciting topic usually to talk about, but hopefully I'll make it interesting, because the reality of the situation is you work hard for your money. We want you to be able to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. So what is a budget? Probably something you're familiar with, but let's go over it just in case. A budget is a snapshot in time, a moment of time of your income, money coming in, minus expenses, money going out. Typically, it's created for a month period. That's a bit of an easier way to organize it, but you can absolutely do it for the whole year. You can do budgeting for every day, for certain times of the year altogether, like multiple months. It's whatever you want to do. And really what we want to know is income minus expenses. What's the total, right? And we want to add that up accurately as best as possible. So, for example, we could look at a previous month. We could look at how much income we earned in that month, how much money we spent in that month. And we want to see if that creates a positive number. We call that a surplus, or it creates a negative number. That would be a deficit. Now, if you have a positive number, you are able to build up savings, pay down debt, buy something extra, achieve financial goals, essentially. If you are seeing a negative number, that could mean that you're headed towards a stressful debt situation. But that would be if you're seeing that consistently. Every time you do a budget, you're seeing a negative number. Once in a while, we know that a certain month could be more expensive than normal. That doesn't mean you're going to have a catastrophic financial emergency. So it depends on your situation, of course. We want to know the trend. Of course, every time you work on a budget, especially if you're doing it for a month period, it's going to ebb and flow and change a little bit. But we do know that budgets can change routinely based on the time of the year. These are things we know we can expect. Think of holidays and birthdays and special occasions. Things you do every year, you can plan for those, right? Those are time of year changes. And then there's situations like those financial emergencies. With situations, these are far more sudden. You usually cannot predict when they are going to happen. And usually they're quite negative and detrimental. So it could be, sudden job loss. It could be health issues for you, family. It could be something to do with your property, that there's a fire or something, right? All things that we hope never happen, but we do need to prepare just in case. Now, with that said, budgets really go hand in hand with financial goal setting. Like I mentioned, as you do that calculation, you want to know how you can direct that money that's left over when you have that surplus. It really helps you stay focused, and it helps you achieve your goals, whether they're short-term or they're long-term. Short-term goals would be something you're trying to achieve in 6 months, a year, up to 2 years. Longer term would be 3, 5, 10 years down the road. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Notice there's a few things in the chat. Just going to check. Okay, a few comments there. Okay. People were noticing my money and happiness line, commenting on that. Okay, great. So budgets do help us in a number of ways. Just sort of hit this home a little bit further. Budgets will help us with recognizing and knowing our source of income and really quantifying that. At the same time, quantifying and understanding, recognizing our expenses and tracking them. Expenses are really split into 2 big areas. We have our needs. These are things we need to take care of. We have, there's ones that are fixed that don't really change too much every time we pay them, versus ones that are more flexible. Think of the fixed ones like rent, mortgage, insurance could be something that's fixed. So every time you pay it, it usually doesn't change that much. So you can plan for that. Versus flexible ones like your utility bills, your groceries, even the money you put aside into a savings account. You have some flexibility, but you still need to put money towards those needs. And then there's the lower priority ones. These are wants. For example, takeout food, right? A gym membership, going to a concert, or the subscription services, especially if you have a lot of them. Subscriptions these days are budget killers for a lot of people, because we really need to keep track of how much we're paying per month to all of those different subscriptions. It can really add up in a substantial way, because we're talking about a lot of services, whether it's the streaming platforms, how you get a taxi, how you get your food delivered, applications for computers, cell phones. Then there's traditional ones like magazines and newspapers, and now you can listen to your music with a subscription. The list goes on and on and on, right? So it's important to understand how much you're paying per month, put them on the same scale, and maybe some are more important to you than others, especially if things are tight, right? Now, the next thing is, of course, as you create budgets, you're going to know and recognize how to achieve your financial goals. We're going to talk about that further, whether you're trying to build up savings or whether you're trying to pay down debt. Also, creating a budget will help you feel more comfortable. It does actually reduce stress, just making you more aware of your financial situation. And it does help you prepare for those financial emergencies. It builds up your financial resilience in case something does happen. Now, in terms of financial goals, we do recommend a strategy for setting them. If you haven't done this before, this is a great way to do it. Or if you want to try it again, this is not the only way to set a financial goal, but it is certainly a good one because it really helps you measure your level of success. It's called SMART goals. Each letter of SMART is an acronym, and you can see all 5 of them there. So the S stands for specific. What do you want to accomplish? Why is it important? And who's involved? Measurable, how will you measure your progress? A is for attainable. Is this realistic? Will it be too hard or easy to get there? R is for relevant. Is this goal worthwhile and worth your time? Is this the right time to try and achieve your goal? And then T is for timely. When do you want to achieve the goal? Are there multiple milestones? So think of this as an example. We could have a person who says, you know what, I really like to go, let's talk about a rental property. I'd like to save up money because I want to maybe fix up my rental property a bit, something to that effect. And I want to do it within the next year. So we got 1 year, we want to save up a certain amount of money. Let's say it's $1,000 because we need to do some fix ups for our place. What do we want to accomplish? Well, I just said it. Why is it important? It could drive increased value of it, help you, attract a really good tenant, things like that. Measurable, how will you measure your progress? Well, how much money should you be saving up to that sort of, to that fund to be able to do some work on the place? Is this realistic? Will it be too hard or easy to get there? So do you have the ability to put some money aside separately, or is that going to cause you a problem because you won't be able to afford, your higher priority areas, right? Relevant, is this worthwhile? This could be worthwhile in terms of the value of your place. And then T is for timely. We talked about 1 year, but how much of the money should we have saved up, let's say at the 6-month point, to know if we're on the path to success? This could be used the same for if you're planning a vacation. This could be used the same for if you're trying to pay down credit card debt and you're trying to focus on, if you can actually achieve it, how this is going to help you in the future, and really get into the details. All right. So importantly, one of these areas that we do want to think about in terms of financial goal setting and being strategic would definitely be savings. Because the reality is, if you've ever thought, well, I can't save money right now, things are not great, I need to pay too many bills. You have to think of a situation where you would suddenly need $500. If, let's say, you have a car repair, you have a broken laptop, your pet needs to go to the vet for something urgent, and you got to pay that bill. If you have something broken in your property and you need to fix it, right? You need to have money aside for that because you don't want to scramble and take out a high interest loan. And now whatever you had to repair, you're now going to be paying interest on that repair because you had to take out a high interest loan. That's how people end up in really problematic types of debt, especially payday loans. It can be a very poor form of debt to be carrying. So you want to build up savings so you have that resilience. Now, the first type of savings you do want to build up is, of course, an emergency fund, simply for the simple reason that emergencies can happen at any time. It's meant to protect you from those debt potholes that definitely happen to all of us, at least at one time or another. And again, build up your financial resilience. Overall, in terms of those goals, again, you want to think about what you're trying to do with that money. If the savings is something you want to use in the short term, in the next 6 months to 2 years, or if it's beyond that, a longer term goal for something that's bigger picture. So you want to keep in mind what the goal is for when you're working on the savings. A lot of people I talk to, they end up opening separate savings accounts for different types of savings they're building up. So they know, okay, this is my long-term savings for emergencies. This is going to be very stable unless I run into an emergency. They might have an account for that. They might have a second account for, they want to take a vacation later in the year, and they're going to build up savings there. And they might have a third one, for another purpose. So it depends on what you're trying to do, but separating out can really help you be organized. As a simple strategy for this, short-term goal, focus on an emergency fund, and do something like this. Consider your savings like an expense. Pay yourself first. That's what we like to call it. You can start with 5% of your paycheck, especially if you're not doing it right now and you're starting from scratch. Even if you haven't started this at all and you're going, 5% of my pay, that's way too much, I can't afford it. Start with a lower amount. Start with, $5, whatever it means for you. Building that routine of building up savings, putting it routinely into a separate savings account is really, really valuable in terms of building those responsible habits. If things are good, you can do this 5%, or maybe you're already doing it now. Move up to 10%. That's what a financial advisor or financial planner is going to recommend. They're going to tell you to build up savings first and then move over into other types of investments from there. And even if you have, let's say, I know we have some people with rental properties in mind, you do need to have some savings available in case you have urgent repairs or something, right? So we want to keep this in mind too. So routine, separate, automatic is also an option. You don't have to use this, but most banks offer an automatic transfer feature where you can move your money from one account to the other, and then you don't have to, remind yourself every time you're doing it. If you started now, for example, set $50 a month, automatically putting into a savings account, and you would have in 10 months $500 saved up, which would cover you in that emergency scenario I brought up at the beginning of this example. Additionally, we can use different types of savings account, like a tax-free savings account, which means any interest or earnings you gain through that account is not taxable when you withdraw it, which is available to anyone as long as they're a permanent resident in Canada. Now, in terms of financial problems that can come up, there's different ways and different tactics you can use to protect yourself.
Robbie, before you continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the chat here, they're asking, how can this service of credit counseling be promoted to tenants in the building? Especially, say, for example, the conversation that you're having with us right now, what's your recommendation, best practices?
Yeah, so if you have tenants in the building, you think they're dealing with, a lot of debt, they don't really know which way's up, how to deal with it or get organized with it. It's as simple as letting them know we're out there and they can talk to us for a free assessment of that situation. It really depends on what they're dealing with, but a credit counselor is going to, do a great job. They're well trained in assessing what the best course of action is. Yeah. And for whoever asked that question, let me know if you have any further questions about it. I will have our contact information for a credit counselor later on, in particular a phone number, which is the easiest way to reach us. But you can also contact me if you directly have questions about a specific scenario.
Yeah, and maybe Robbie, from your organization, maybe you have posters that people can put up in their buildings, in their bulletin boards, right? So it would be great to share some of that later on. Thanks.
Yeah, we have especially the thing we like to do is we have financial education booklets. So if we think people are struggling with certain topics, we could definitely provide those booklets, and it has easy access to talk to our credit counselors. If someone says, I'm going to call this service and see if that works. But yeah, we could totally do that. Great point.
Great.
All
Glenn,
right.
just a message to Glenn. You are typing directly to me. If you'd like to chat with Robbie as well, you can do the talk to everybody.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Robbie. Continue.
Sounds good. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. So going back to these financial situations, really the mindset here is if things are going in a direction where you're getting a little uncomfortable, you're noticing you're just not really sure and confident that things are going the right direction, you might be at risk for some financial trouble. There are different things you can do to protect yourself. So the first one here is you can create a budget and manage your money, which we just talked about extensively. And you can set those financial goals and make sure you're sticking to them. So I say that because sometimes people set their financial goals and they don't really think about them afterwards. So especially if things are getting a little bit tighter, this is the moment to really zero in on that budgeting and financial goals, especially if you're being a little proactive and making sure you're managing it very very carefully. This can be quite successful, and using SMART goals would be a really good way to do that if you're worried about things. Now, if you're looking for help with this, if If maybe you have like a big investment portfolio, a bigger portfolio that you really need some help or getting organized with, that would be the case where I would recommend going to like a financial advisor or financial planner if you do need that type of support, and they would be able to help with those. That's the service they offer. Now, additionally, something we want to be careful of is if we're following it, we're falling into some financial trouble, avoid borrowing more money. This is something that's really crucial. So we don't want to dig the hole deeper and deeper. But if we're in a situation where we do need to borrow more money, even though things are not going well, it's very important to understand and recognize the costs. And this is something we see all the time at credit counseling, Consolidated Credit Canada. Like, our credit counselors will talk to someone who went ahead and took out a payday loan or a high interest line of credit, and they didn't really understand the cost of what that loan would be. It works for even credit cards. People don't necessarily know. I work with people all the time in workshops and talk to people. I would say most people are not fully aware of what the cost in terms of interest is if you are borrowing on a credit card. So it's very important to recognize those costs if you are going to incur that debt, and make sure you're managing it well. Another tactic, of course, increasing your income. If your expenses are too high, you increase the income to hopefully balance out the situation. And on the flip side, you can do this also, or instead, maybe you're reducing your expenses. Budgeting is really crucial for these ideas. Checking your credit report, also very important. You want to make sure everything is accurate. You're knowledgeable on this topic. You should be checking your credit report at least once every 6 months for both credit bureaus. And we're going to talk about that again a little bit later on. Now, when it comes to financial emergencies, that absolutely leads us into talking about risk. Risk is something that we really want to keep in mind because many factors can lead to a financial emergency in our lives. Sudden job loss, illness, home repair, accidents, natural disasters, fires, scams, theft, separation, economic changes. We're certainly thinking of economic changes these days. Scam and identity theft is huge. Auto thefts, we're hearing all about. We're talking to so many people. All of these situations can cause some real problem, especially with this type of group. Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, you do really want to be mindful of rental scams in particular. Really, the rule of thumb, and we won't go into this too heavily, but if you ever have an experience where something's just too good to be true, you have this sort of sixth sense that something's maybe a little bit off, it's best to do your due diligence on it. Maybe Google it, the scenario, maybe talk to a friend, talk to someone like us at Consolidated Credit Canada, talk to Weiting and the Openroom team, ask those questions. Because if you're thinking, well, there's something a little bit off about this, there's a good chance it actually is a scam and you've just saved yourself from a big problem. I personally have experienced a rental scam before, and I caught it before it was a big issue. Where someone was saying, yeah, I want to, it was a bedroom we were renting on a place I was renting. So we are kind of subleasing a room, and someone was like, yeah, I want to rent that room. And they're like, oh, but I'm on a cruise, and can I pay you in this way? And we just, the whole thing sounded a little bit off. It was like, why would you want to pay me that way? And so we Googled it and immediately found the scam, just because we knew it was like, this is seems like it should be okay. Like, how would it be a scam? How would it work? And we just looked it up, immediately found out, and like, okay, we should move on, right? Just that moment. And that was a few years back for me.
Too. I was also trying to rent a property downtown, and it was a really, really good pricing. So of it. So I was like, oh my gosh, I got to jump on this. And then they wanted me to mail in money, and they were going to mail in the key to me, and they were in another country. I was driving to the postal office at the time. And then on my way driving there to post the details to them, I was thinking, okay, something doesn't sound right. And then I searched it up like you and ended up being knowing that it was a big scam. I don't know if anybody else in the group here has seen scams or been part of one. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any, feel free to share it.
Definitely. But it's something to watch out for in so many scenarios. You'll see probably tomorrow we'll read about some not rental scam necessarily, but some other type of scheme. And there were ways to kind of protect yourself, or that person could have taken a little bit extra step, and they might have saved themselves from a huge headache. So, but yeah, I can totally see what type of scenario that would be. But it's like, oh, this sounds really good. It's a little too good to be true, right? So you have to be careful. Okay, so in terms of risk, though, it is very important to assess them, right? So things you want to keep in mind to assess your level of risk, to really prepare for that level of risk. Insurance is a big one. Whether you're a tenant, a landlord, whatever your situation, you should have appropriate insurance, because the idea is with insurance that you're sharing that risk with the insurance provider. That's the whole idea of it. Home, property, auto, life, medical, whatever you think is appropriate for yourself. Some of them you might have to have as requirement of a lease agreement. Auto insurance, obviously, if you have a car, you have to by law have that. Make sure the insurance meets your needs. So it's important to reevaluate that as things change. And very much important, especially these days, you do really need to shop around. I personally had that experience. I've talked to people with that experience, especially in auto insurance. It's gone up quite a bit. But it is important to shop around and understand the value you're getting for that insurance. It's not something you need to regularly do, but you should keep tabs on it. Savings investment, another way to mitigate risks. Short-term versus long-term is the intent for those. We want to be aware of what we have and what we could use if we're going to run into an emergency. We want to know what we have access to. Documents and inventory of valuable items. This is something I talk about, and usually when people hear about this, they're like, oh, shoot, I haven't done that. Especially for your own property, it's important to actually know what's in your home. Unfortunately, we've talked to people who deal with a fire, and they're going, yeah, I have all this, artwork that I collected or whatever it is. And then they go to the insurance provider, and the insurance provider is giving them a lot of grief about claiming that. So it is very helpful to have an inventory, especially of valuable things, to have a collection of your very important documents, make sure they're in a safe place, have extra copies. This is something that's really, really helpful, because if you do experience that financial emergency where property is damaged, this can really save you from some very difficult spots. And make sure do protect sensitive, important files. Think of things like with computers, if you have your photos stored on there. This is something I personally do. Have a large USB or a drive that you can unplug from the computer, where you can store your sensitive files. That way, if your device ever gets compromised, you still have your sensitive files. No one can hold them for ransom, right? Ransomware is a big thing that people sometimes encounter, and that's a risk. Avoid taking unnecessary risks, things like gambling and such, speeding with your car. We don't want to add risk. There's already many risks we experience in life, so this is something to keep in mind. And recognizing good and bad forms of debt. So borrowing money is not inherently bad. Investments, things that are going to provide you with good value, they should grow in value in the future. Those are typically viewed as good forms of debt in a general scope. Bad forms of debt, something we're going to borrow money on to pay for now that really does not provide you with any or almost pretty much very little value in the future. That's a bad form of debt. So typically we view credit card debt as a bad form of debt because it's high interest. Versus we look at mortgage debt, as much as that's got more expensive recently. Mortgage debt is supposed to provide you with value in the future, so it is viewed as a good form of debt. A student loan also viewed as a good form of debt because it should help you gain a better paying job and so on. If you are running into trouble relating to debt, though, there are various warning signs you do want to watch out for yourself. There's something called debt to income ratio. If you go to our coffee platform, which I'm going to share a limited form of access to some of the resources on there, that's totally free for you to use. You can calculate your debt to income ratio on there. If you have a high debt to income ratio, it could mean that you're headed towards a pretty stressful debt situation. It's something you want to pay attention to. can also affect your ability to qualify for future loans. So it's something you want to keep in mind, but it is what it sounds like. It's your debt as a ratio to how much income you're bringing in. Using more than 30% of your available credit card limit. So this is also known as credit utilization. Lines of credit and credit cards would be the thing we look at here. If you are using more than 30% of what you are allowed to borrow at any time, this can not only lower your credit score, but it can be a sign for yourself that you might be headed towards a stressful debt situation. It definitely puts you at a higher risk scenario. And that is why it lowers your credit score, because the credit bureaus recognize that this puts you at higher risk for not being able to pay back what you're borrowing. Credit card minimum payments require at least 10% of your monthly net income. If you're experiencing a situation like that, that could mean you're, you might be struggling with debt. Using one credit card to pay off another credit card, that would be another clear warning sign. Only being able to make minimum payments on forms of borrowing, another clear one. We want to be paying well more than the minimum, especially on credit cards, to avoid incurring extra interest. Choosing between expenses you need, terrible situation to be in. Choosing between, having food or money for shelter or clothing or car repair, that's a really tough spot to be in. And obviously, if you're experiencing it, that would be a sign that things, are not in a great spot. Maxing out at least one credit card. People do this more often than some of the other things here, but if you've experienced that, it is a warning sign to yourself that, hey, maybe I'm not managing this in the best way possible, and I need to be careful with it. That can lead to kind of a debt spiral. And applying for a new credit card, just be able to pay your bills. We see people do that a lot too. Maybe they've maxed out most things and they still have a good enough credit score that they're able to open a new credit card. They're just going to max that out too, because the spending behavior is not really in a good spot. So these are the types of warning signs you really need to watch out for. Just checking what we have in the chat. Okay. So the next thing to do is, well, what happens if you do run into trouble related to, debt, warning signs, financial emergencies? First thing you would do, especially if it's related to money, access your financial safety net. We want to build up savings, investments. That's all great. But if we need to access these, we should. If we do need to borrow money and we're able to take out a low cost loan, think of like a personal loan or a line of credit that's a lower interest than usual. A second mortgage can sometimes be that option. They do come with risks, and it's not something we always recommend, but depending on the scenario and if you feel responsible, these are things you want to tap into. I would say the first thing we tap into is our savings, and then we move on from there. Notify insurance providers and other relevant services if something happens that does involve insurance. So if any of those financial emergencies relating to property, you need to claim insurance, definitely do. If your credit card has been compromised, if you're a tenant and your stove is not working or something, communicating that to the landlord is important, because it's important to identify that issue and move forward in a positive direction. It's important for many things. Additionally, if the issue that you need to go to the provider about is related to a financial topic, let's say a bank, something not everyone knows is you can do things like a payment holiday, deferral, or even ask for lower interest rate. Especially if you go to them with a plan. So if, let's say, you have credit card debt and you're really struggling with it and you're only about making the minimum payment, but you do have a budget and you're trying to work towards it, you can go to the credit card provider and you say, hey, I'm trying to pay this off. I could use some support. This is my plan. I'm trying to be organized. Can you give me a period of time where, I don't have to make any payments to build up my savings or whatever? Or can you defer it? Or can you actually charge me a lower interest rate? This does happen. I've talked to people who've been successful with this. Not everyone will be. It depends on the scenario. But the reality is, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. So if you don't ask for that kind of help, they're not going to help you. And if you do ask, they say no, you're in the same spot anyway. So it doesn't really change anything. We know. Yeah, go
Question
ahead.
there. Oh, I didn't know that you could actually go to the bank and request for a lower interest rate. So am
Yeah.
I imagining that it would be a situation where I've racked up a whole bunch of debt and I really need assistance bringing it down or paying it off so I can go to the bank? But when I go to the bank, who do I approach?
Yeah, so let's say it's a credit card, right? You racked up, you have $5,000 limit, and you have, almost maxed out the credit card. You go to them, say, hey, I have a high balance on this credit card. You're well over the 30% utilization. I really want to pay this off. I'm budgeting. I'm going to be making higher payments. I could use some help because the interest costs so much. While I'm making these larger payments, is there a possibility you can lower my interest rate? And they might do it for 6 months, a year. Again, worst case scenario, they say no. But I would call the credit card provider. So literally the number on the back of your credit card. Maybe you need to
Okay,
talk to a supervisor, but yeah, that would be the idea. Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. You might as well check, right? It's one of those things. But if they're seeing that like you're making the minimum payment, they're giving you this chance, you don't really do anything with it. Likely when it expires, if they do offer to you, they're not going to renew it, because at the end of the day, they're collecting money off that interest, right? So, but worth a shot. Mortgage deferrals are probably more common in people's heads. When I mention deferrals, people can defer their payment for like a month, or a little bit longer, which can be very helpful. But if you're deferring it, you're still going to have to pay more interest when it comes back because you have more principal to pay for. But it depends on the scenario and depends on you, right? Now, if relevant, if we've run into something more criminal in nature, we need the police involved. Definitely do go and contact the police, file police reports, especially if we're talking about things like scams. If you file a police report, that's the thing to do. Do make sure to keep the original copy, make a whole bunch of copies, especially if we're dealing with, credit card fraud or something. Credit bureaus are going to want copies of that. Other institutions like the bank might want copies. So it's something to be aware of. And you'll see a theme of this because I'm going to mention this something similar in a second. Notifying the credit bureaus something's going on. Putting a fraud alert on your profile. That's something people have to do. So that's there. Sending copies of that police report I just mentioned. And additionally, like I was saying, keep a good record of whatever you have to do here is a very, very important thing. Document, create personal copies. If you're dealing with damage and something, take photos, make sure they're very clear. Write down who you're talking to, with whatever service provider. Taking good notes is really important. People's names, the date you spoke to them, if they have like employee ID numbers or reference numbers, all that stuff really, really helpful. Because and this absolutely happens with even the credit bureaus. If you talk to someone, they make certain promises to you, and you go back and they're like, we have no record of that. You have your record. It may or may not help you a lot, but you do have, and it gives you a chance, and you can say, hey, this is what we spoke about verbatim. It should be in the notes. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I know a
Yeah,
few
go ahead.
people, Robbie, who have had their identities stolen from them, and it is a mess dealing with the credit bureaus at that point in time.
Oh yeah, it is.
Very
It is
unfortunate.
not a short-term fix by any means. And having good documentation, taking screenshots or printing out what the issue is if you see fraud on a credit card or fraudulent charges. I've personally had experience where I've had a credit card get compromised, and the bank actually reached out to me saying, hey, we caught this, we've closed off the account, you have nothing to worry about, but we're letting you know we're sending a new card. On the flip side, I've had it where I look at my statement and I see a bunch of fraudulent charges, which were very overtly fraudulent. Unless I eat 4 dinners in one day. It was all like, food ordering apps. And it was for like almost $1,000. And so I reported it to the credit card, different credit card, but I had printed out, or I think I took screenshots at the time of the actual issue. I reported to them, they flagged it, and it got fixed. But I have that record, because if it disappears from my online statement and I don't have a saved record, what do I have to show, where what happened, right? So it's important to document for yourself, especially identity theft. It's really tough to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. And often in the landlord and tenant space, what we say is that if there are disputes, if there's anything that's happening, document everything. Even when you've had a phone call, document it, follow it up with an email stating these are the points that we have talked about so that you have good records in case you have to go to the insurance company or to the credit bureaus if you get your rent payment reported into the credit bureaus. That's very important, and you need to have evidence.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if there's a void in that communication, even if normally that's the practice and something happened where there wasn't communication, that can be telling too in certain situations where, if a tenant did something they were totally, not telling the landlord about, and then, there's a dispute. But yeah, good communication. Yeah, all around. Very, very good point there, we take.
Thanks, Robbie. All right.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. So reach out for support. This is the last piece here. If you do need support when it comes to mental health, food security, helping doing taxes, housing, jobs, debt solutions like credit counseling, if you need this type of support, please do use it. A lot of these resources are out there in the community. This time of year, we talk about tax clinics for a lot of people that need it. So these are also here if people are running trouble, and they're usually a really wealth of fantastic resources. Specifically with debt, as promised, a little bit more information about it. Definitely do determine and understand things like your budget, the totals you owe, minimum monthly payments, the cost you are being charged for that borrowing. You want to take back control of your debt and really be able to manage it rather than it managing you. So in terms of doing it yourself, which is definitely the first thing we want to try, if we're dealing with debt, you want to meet your payment obligations as best as possible. And then from there, do things like pay down your highest interest debt first, or we want to pay our lowest balance of debt first. So these are two different strategies. One, in terms of highest interest debt, can take a little bit of time to pay it off, but it is the most expensive form of debt. Lowest balance would be about building momentum so that you can pay off one at a time. Now, the key thing with this is that as you pay off an account, it's recommended you actually close off that account and you're not using it anymore to not recreate that debt.
Wait, Robbie, on
yeah.
that point, actually, question on that.
Yeah.
When you close off in a credit card account, it actually impacts your credit score. So is the recommendation to always close it?
Yeah, like the reality is, and we're going to talk about credit scores in a little bit, but the reality is your credit score comes secondary to dealing with debt, right? If you are struggling with a debt scenario and you're trying to pay it off, as it is, if you're dealing with that debt, your credit score is already not in great shape. And yes, if you close off the accounts, it's going to affect your credit score a bit, but the fact that you're eliminating them is going to be overall positive, right? You're no longer carrying that level of debt. The real thing that we really concentrate on is people's behavior, because it's really tough to talk to people where they've worked so hard to do these tactics, they paid off the debt, but they left the credit card open and they just paid it off, and now they're like, oh, I can use it again, and then they step back into those poor habits a little bit, and the debt starts adding up again. And that can happen in a few different scenarios, but we say, not everyone has to do it this way. It depends on you and if you really trust yourself, but we do overall in general recommend closing the accounts, not really worrying about the credit score, but more worrying about getting back into bad habits and protecting yourself. That's really the idea. But yeah, you're totally right, though. It would affect the credit score, but at the end of the day, we want to build good financial habits.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it's the same idea with the next point here. Consolidate your debts, taking a big loan with a lower interest, and maybe you dump all of your credit card debt or lines of credit. You put it all onto that lower interest loan. There are things called consolidation loans. You, of course, have to have a good credit score to be able to qualify for these. But the same thing can happen. You could do this and it might be a great tactic, but you have to be responsible with making those payments. And now you have a situation where you were like maxing out your credit cards. Now the credit card's zero, and maybe you're used to using all the time. So you might end up with a high balance loan that's low interest. Plus now you're dealing with credit card debt too. So it's important to have some good spending habits. But these are tactics, if you're responsible, that can totally work. And we see people using them all the time. Contact your bank for support programs. We mentioned this before. And definitely, like I mentioned, speak to nonprofit credit counseling like ourselves. We can definitely help free assessment in terms of debt options, creating a budget, and really knowing what you can do from there. In terms of contacting us for further information, understanding some additional financial topics, well, I mentioned our coffee platform. You have free access to a limited version of the platform. We got tools on there, different worksheets, a lot of additional financial topics beyond what we'll talk about today. You can go to finfit.coffeetime.ca, and FinFit stands for financial fitness. This is totally free for you to use. You're not going to encounter something where it's going to ask for payments. And you're welcome to share this with other people if you think this would benefit them and you think they would like to learn about, budgeting and credits and spending and that debt to income ratio that's in there too. If you're dealing with debt and you want to talk to our team, 844-394-9115. Our team, again, no obligation. There's no upfront fees or anything like that. There's no consequence on your credit score or whatever for getting that assessment. It's completely, there's no sort of downside to getting the, better idea of what your options are if you are dealing with debt. Yeah. I noticed there's a couple things in the chat. Oh, that's from you, Weiting. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I was just reposting it to folks in case they didn't get a
Perfect.
chance to screenshot that.
And a couple people, I think, mentioned to me they had to hop off and direct message. No worries if you have, I know it's the evening and I think there might be a Maple Leaf game. I get it. And if you're not from Toronto, then you probably really didn't like that comment. Okay, so the last thing we'll do, and I know we want to make sure there's time for questions. We're going to talk about one final topic, which is credit reports and scores. And we're going to get a lot more interactive for a little bit here because we're going to do a pop quiz and test your understanding of credit reports and scores. Simple, true or false. So in the chat, right, T for true, F for false. No need to explain or anything like that. I will do the explaining. And whether you guess or not, totally fine. Yeah, we ready to play?
Yeah, Robbie, let's do this.
All right,
sorry. Yeah.
I heard you.
Let's do this. But
right.
go a little slowly because we're gonna give out some passes at this stage. So we'll have people comment, and then I'm gonna ask you to pick a random number after. Okay. All right. So don't look into the chat.
Okay, I won't look. All right. Question number one: using debit cards and checks builds my credit score. True or false? We need like Jeopardy music.
Dun, 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 dun.
That's good.
Dun, 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 dun. All right.
Very suspenseful. All right.
Okay.
And the answers are.
All right. Robbie, we've got some T, F, F, T, F, 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 F. Okay. Majority is false, but a couple of trues.
Okay.
So what do we have as the answer?
The answer is, it is false. Dun, dun, dun.
Number one, false. All right.
So do you need me to pick a number now or should I explain first and then number later?
Explain it. Well, we'll finish all three first. Go for it.
Okay. Sounds good. So debit cards, checks, prepaid credit cards. I think someone in the chat mentioned Coho. That would be an example of a financial institution that does prepaid credit cards, and also cash. So debit cards, checks, cash, prepaid credit cards, they do not help you build up your credit score. You might be wondering, well, why is that the case? Well, these are good ways to use your money, potentially, depending on what you prefer. However, they don't communicate over to the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus, there are two of them, Canada, Equifax and TransUnion. They collect information that's sent to them, about how you're borrowing money, how you're using credit. When you use debit cards, checks, cash, prepaid credit cards, that information is not communicated to them. So whether it would be positive or negative for that matter, it cannot impact your score because they do not hear about it. So that's why this is false.
All right.
All right. Question number 2.
Yeah.
Not paying my rent can impact my credit score. True or false? So what do we think? I see all the chat messages coming in. I'm like, I'm tempted to look, but I won't.
Yeah. Those who are directly messaging me, message into the actual chat for everybody. But when we count, Robbie,
How do we
afterwards,
do
we'll
that?
count
How do we
guys.
direct into the
Oh,
actual?
yeah. In the comments section, you will see a little to Weiting Bolu is probably what you have set it to. And it says direct message in red. What you have to do is click into that and then click everyone in meeting. Select that.
Oh, everyone.
Exactly.
Got it.
Okay.
That was
Great.
very well described.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, Robbie, we've got the answers. We've got some false, true, true, false, 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 true, if evicted, true. Ooh, this is a good one. I want to I want to add some commentary afterwards. All right.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think, Weiting?
I know it's true if they the landlord and or the tenant signs up for credit reporting. And that's the comment that I was going to make, is that very, very soon, Openroom will be facilitating this. And for small landlords, we hope to provide this product for free, so that tenants can increase the credit score and the landlord will help you reduce the
delinquency.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's why it says it can impact your score, because if there's no reporting process to get that information to the credit bureaus, that would not be the case. But the reality is there are situations that do exist where it can impact your score. What Weiting mentioned there is something that's relatively new to the industry. I can't say, I don't know, you probably know better than me how old that is, but it's very new. If the landlord and tenant agree to report it, there you go. The other option, and there are some other programs I think that exist around that. The other option is, like someone mentioned in the chat, I believe, if it does go forward with a legal proceeding to collect that debt, get it listed on the credit bureau, that would be a case where it would end up on your credit report, and it would be definitely a negative remark on there, and it would lower your score. So those are the examples there.
Yeah. And one more additional comment to the group listening in is that there are two types of rent payments, right? One is the bad debt, when you've already gone to court, you have the court order and it is bad, so bad debt that the tenant owes. And in that case, you actually do not need consent to report that into the credit bureaus, but you have to use a third party, because likely they will not take a single landlord sending the information into, or sending the data into Equifax or TransUnion. And then there is the good rent reporting, on-time rent reporting, and that one you do need consent. So ideally going forward, what Openroom hopes to do is that we help facilitate that and help you write clauses in your appendix, addendum, piece to the Ontario Standard Lease, so that you have that all set up before your rent.
Sounds great. And plus, if you have a tenant who's not willing to do something like that, can sort of make you ask questions as to why. So it can kind of help you identify maybe a problematic situation too.
Yeah.
Great points there.
Right. We have a few questions in here. Anna asks, so collateral or prepaid credit card doesn't help you build your credit?
Collateral, it depends on what situation you're talking about. Prepaid credit card does not in any version. Now, there's a chance prepaid credit card will change in the future. But for example, if you're using the financial institutions that market themselves as this is a prepaid credit card, it could be a good way to use your money. It's just not reporting to the credit bureaus. Some of them will also have credit billing programs, but that's a separate thing. So that's to keep in mind. There is the other prepaid credit card, which is the one you see next to the gift cards, which have their own problems. But of course, anyone can buy those, and therefore they're not identifying you related to the credit bureau. And if you can clarify what you mean by collateral, I'll try and address that.
Anna, do you want to unmute?
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
Collateral meaning, for example, TD Bank can issue credit card and asking, for example, 500 to put as a deposit, which is kind of collateral which you cannot get back
Okay.
until you close the card.
Okay, so that
This is kind of prepaid card because you cannot go over 500. It's only money which you can use.
Yeah.
Is it reported to credit? This is how you start to build your credit history or not?
Yeah, Anna, great point there. And thank you for clarifying. So that's not a prepaid credit card, but I totally understand your thinking there about it's kind of the same idea. That deposit of money, that's actually called a secured credit card. Secured credit card does report to the credit bureaus.
I see.
Yeah.
Then I mixed up prepaid meaning like
I
you
know
buy
it's
from the
very
store.
confusing. Yeah.
I
Part of the
see.
confusion is that the normal credit card has a slightly different name, just no one says it this way. It's called an unsecured credit card. You're born with a promise to pay back later. That's what those normal credit cards are. A secured credit card's easier to open because you make that deposit. So it's very helpful as a credit building program.
I see. Okay. I was confused between prepaid and collateral. I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Great
clarification.
question. Yeah, of course. Great question.
Good question. I did not know that was a thing. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Glenn,
right.
another question in
Oh.
here. Glenn asks, in the lease, could it be noted that the credit reporting, or can we include the credit reporting? I am not sure if this is legal. Glenn, if you write it into the lease addendum, you like you state in there that tenant agrees to use a third-party service for rent reporting, it is legal. It is happening right now. Some services out there, such as Borrowell, requires the tenant to pay for a subscription service, for example, to report their rent. Some, like Front Lobby, will require housing providers to report rent. So these services actually already exist out there. Right. So Openroom is building our own set, but it already exists. It's not actually a new concept, but it has been a recent development in the rental ecosystem. Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say it's not of like very, very common practice, but it is an existing practice. Is that fair to say?
That's good. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it. Yes,
Yeah.
thanks. And then we have Lala that asks, when will this feature come out where we can get consent and inform tenants of credit report? So Lala, you can actually write it or search online of available clauses that you can add to the addendum today. It's just that for Openroom, it'll be sometime in Q3 when we come out with this feature.
The only thing, especially if you're a small landlord, you have like one unit, maybe two, I would say I would be careful with adding something if you already have a good relationship with your tenant, adding something in the middle, because sometimes people might think you're changing things to get them on something.
Yeah.
And if you already have it, they're paying and everything, I wouldn't mess with that.
I absolutely agree with Robbie on that. So many people actually asked me when, like, what's the benefit of this for tenants and landlords really to sign up, right? So that's why what Openroom is exploring is a loyalty program in the future, that you're not just reporting for the benefit of increasing your credit score, because sometimes people don't actually care that much about their credit score. Right. So in those cases, okay, so can we work with some retailers for some discounts, giveaways, certain things to entice people to continue to pay rent on time? And that could be very interesting to play out. So if anybody is interested in this, I would love to chat with you further on what that would look like. So feel free to message me. I'll post my email into the chat. All right.
Perfect.
Okay, let me just see if we have any more, and then you'll answer this one last one, and then we're going to give away a couple of pieces.
Excellent. I love giveaway stuff.
I agree. Glenn says, I think this is a great idea. I'm going to bring it up with the president of our landlord association. Thank you very much, Glenn. And will you work with other landlord associations? Glenn, can you clarify that question? What are you looking for? Can you unmute?
Can I unmute? It's a good question.
You're unmuted now.
Oh, I'm unmuted now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I can unmute. No, what I have never heard of this. So it's a new concept for me. I think it's a great idea. Obviously, I'm kind of the old school when it comes to technology. Like I don't do any online banking, etc. My wife was actually doing that before. We've been together 28 years, and she was doing online stuff before, like just when it just came out. I'm totally just so nervous of that kind of stuff. But in any event, I think it's a great idea. Just like I guess for encryptions, like how if the say the association wanted to do something, what they would probably want to know what type of encryption that Room would have. Like if say there was a breach of privacy, etc. How the tenants would be protected, because the tenants would go then after the landlord, and obviously the lawyers would formulate some type of language that completely indemnify the landlord, like that you're doing that, you tenant are agreeing to do this freely, and no matter what happens with your data, we're not responsible.
Yeah, absolutely, Glenn. When we have that all figured out, all the landlord associations will know, and that way you can pass on the information to your tenants appropriately. We do take cybersecurity breaches very, very seriously. I mean, I don't want to get into some of the attempts at open room data collection from third parties that have tried, but we have
This
held down the
would go
fort.
to Equifax, right? So this credit
Yeah.
reporting would go to the two main sources.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. And when we're ready, but you can also explore other products that are out there today, right? You don't have to wait for Open Room, Glenn. I just want to put that out there, that there are great companies working on this. You don't have to use Open Room or don't have to wait for us. But if you do,
No, I think it's a great idea. I think more of, so when the tenants, do they have to give the information to you, or is it up to them?
It is actually,
No, if they're in breach of, say, they don't pay their rent, then we can go and send that information to you.
exactly. And we'll tell you all about the logistics. Different companies
Uh-huh.
might do it a little bit differently. Some are automatic, depending on how you do the payments. There are different ways to do it, and we'll dive into that on another call.
I think it's a really great idea. It really encourages tenants to pay the rent. We don't want to report anything to you,
exactly.
quite frankly. So it's
Exactly.
more of a stick, as a carrot and stick.
Yeah.
You have great
Yeah.
credit rating because you're
Carrot's
doing
always
so
better.
good, but if you don't pay, you're gonna, your credit's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Great.
And we want to bring in more carrots on that front. All right,
Exactly,
Robbie,
more
let's
carrots.
turn it over to you. Last question here.
All
Go
right,
for it.
final question of the true or false. Checking my credit report always lowers my credit score. True or false? Let's see what happens. I feel like people should know this one in this group, but we never know.
Okay, we have some false, true, false, true. Any more
Okay.
guessing? Any more strategic, educated guesses?
Going
All right.
once, going twice.
And
We ready?
So there are a couple more falses.
Okay.
All right, Robbie. What's
So
the answer? What do you got?
majority was false, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it is false. So I figured this group would be pretty good. If you got this wrong, do not feel any sort of way about it, because a lot of people have questions about this or have misconceptions. Very common. That's why this is a question. So the reason this is false is because soft credit checks exist. There's two ways to check your credit report. Soft check is what we use as consumers. Soft checks will never lower your credit score, no matter how many times you do it. No impact on your credit score. Okay, so that's very important to know. So soft check, no impact. Hard checks do lower your credit score. The reason for that is, in most situations, it does literally mean you're doing a hard check because you're trying to qualify to borrow more money. You're trying to take out a loan, right? And so the credit bureaus are worried about how you're going to use that money. They view you as higher risk, and they don't know how you're going to be responsible with it, or if you are or not. Therefore, they lower your score so that you're not able to quickly open more and more loans. Okay. Hard check will lower your score. Soft check will not, which is why this is false.
I wanted to actually mention something here. Very recently, I think a Single Key, which is a provider of tenant background checks, had talked about this as a issue where landlords, if a tenant go and applies to different properties and the landlords start pulling or requesting for credit scores, it actually does a hard check on the tenants. So in that case, for as a solution, what Single Key had come up with is a QR code where if it checks once, then that file can then be QR code by other housing providers to read that credit score in case one landlord did not want to take on this particular tenant or applicant.
And it can be done where a landlord will say, you know what, all the tenant, the applicant's gonna do a soft check. And usually if you know what you're looking at, you have a good shot of knowing if there's something wrong with it or not. If that's something you feel comfortable doing, you could get a soft check for applicant as well. Depends on the scenario you're in. But if if a landlord has to do it, typically it's going to end up being a hard check. So it could have it would have that negative impact.
Yeah. How fast does my credit score come back after one hard check?
Oh, that's a great question. So the unfortunate reality is I cannot give a precise answer because the credit bureaus are opaque organizations that do not tell us what they do very well because they don't want to. They're proprietary. They're not part of the government or anything. The reality is if you do a hard check, usually the general idea is it's going to take like 3 or 4 months at least for it to really recover completely. So especially if you're looking at, taking out a big loan like a mortgage or car loan, you don't want to be like opening a credit card right before you take out that big loan, right? Because you don't want to do a hard check and then go for your mortgage and it turns out your credit score is a little lower than it used to be because you just did a hard check, right? So you want to be a little strategic about when those are done.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Robbie, can you pick a number between 1 and 25? Because there were 25 answers throughout these 3 questions.
I'm going to go with number 9.
Number 9? Okay,
that feels good to me.
Okay, number 9 was the first person that answered the second question.
Oh, so look at that.
Who was that? Let's take a look. Hold on. Oh, where am I? Dun, dun, dun. Jay Cruz. So Jay, punch into the chat if you are in the GTA area and I'll message you separately. Congratulations.
Nice.
Okay, Robbie, continue, please. Thank you.
All right. So we're just going to wrap up quickly credit reports and scores. Then we're going to wrap up the session and have some more time for questions. So now, as we just talked about soft check versus hard check, we want you to be able to get your credit report and know how to do it. And you can definitely do this with a free soft check. There are free options that exist. Going to the credit bureau website is an option, although they do have paid options too. So if you go to TransUnion or Equifax and it's asking you for payment details, you went to the wrong spot. That's not the free option, obviously. There are online options and mail options. At the end of this presentation, I will have the links that take you directly to the free online ones. With these and saying this, I do want to hit home a very important point, which I think we kind of covered. There are 2 credit bureaus, right? Equifax, TransUnion. That does in fact mean you have 2 credit reports from the 2 credit bureaus, and you have 2 credit scores as well. So it's very important to check both separately. It's very possible. Unfortunately, I've talked to many people who have experienced this, where you could check TransUnion, everything's completely what you expect, it's totally fine, and then you check Equifax and there's a big, big error. So it's very important to check both at least once every 6 months. That's the minimum you should do. Basically twice a year, do this. You should be totally fine. Good to check for errors. And also it can identify identity theft because again, if someone's opening a credit card in your name, it's going to be a hard check on your credit report and you might identify a big problem before it becomes a bigger issue. Online banking, great source. If you're looking for the TransUnion credit report only, most major banks offer this with the exception of TD Bank. So if Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, they all offer it. Tangerine, Simply Financial. TD Bank doesn't though. You just have to log in. You'll have access to TransUnion, but remember separately check Equifax. Additionally, you can contact us as part of that free assessment of checking your debt situation, working on a budget. We do also do a soft pull of the TransUnion credit report. So that's another way to check the information on there, and our credit counselors can confirm that information with you. Free credit score information, borrowwell.com offers Equifax information. Creditkarma.ca offers TransUnion information. So other free sources available. Do note, if you use these services, they have other programs, but they will promote to you different types of loans and credit cards. If you're just interested in credit reports and scores, that's why you're using them, which is actually what I personally do. Just ignore the rest. They'll promote you lots of stuff. It's not even necessarily the best stuff you qualify for. So something to keep in mind. All right, understanding what you're looking at when you're looking at a credit report and score. So credit reports have your history as a borrower in addition to personal information, which can help you verify, if your details are correct, workplaces, previous addresses, those things will be on there too. With the credit report, typically you'll see somewhere around 6 to 10 years of history on various credit accounts and how you're using them. So credit cards, loans, mortgages, internet or cell phone provider bills, those will likely be there if they're in your name. How you're using them, if you're paying on time, in full, regularly, you're going to have a good credit score. If you are missing payments, you're making partial payments, you have late payments, that's going to cause a lower credit score. Okay. Also think about that credit utilization on credit cards and lines of credit. If you're going over 30% of your credit utilization, so that's 30%, over 30% of like a credit card limit at any point, that does also lower your score. If you pay it back in full, it will recover, but something you want to keep in mind. Not everyone knows that. Credit scores are calculated based on that credit report information. It's going to be a number between 300 and 900. Or if you have no information, you just moved the country, you haven't turned 18 yet, it will be 0. However, I always implore people, if you think for some reason you have a 0, check it for yourself. I literally spoke to someone who's 20 years old. He said he's never opened a credit card, nothing that should be on his credit report. And he checked it anyways. Right after a session like this, he found a credit card that was listed under his name. Why? Because someone else who lived in the same general area has a similar name. Their credit reports were mixed up. So he identified that before it became a bigger issue and cleaned it up. That can happen for sure. And it does happen. And we know it happens more often with Equifax credit reports, in fact, in case you were wondering. High credit score is between 660 and 900. Obviously, the higher, the better. What that really means is you've been responsible with your borrowing in the past, and you're a lower risk borrower in the future. You're responsible. Low score is below 660 all the way to 300. You might be, or you are, a high risk borrower who won't be able to pay, or you're just starting out and your credit score is still building up. It's going to make it harder for you to qualify for loans, or you might qualify, but you're going to have to be paying a much higher interest rate. Higher scores overall mean access to credit at better terms and conditions. It's going to be easier to qualify. So for example, you might qualify for a mortgage and they might offer you an actual discount on the mortgage interest rate compared to what they publicly advertise. That is a regular thing that happens based on their qualification that they're looking for in assessing you. Overall, for this evening session, we've been climbing this financial mountain together. We are wanting to do it with confidence, with knowledge, but it can definitely get you stressed out and worried, and financial emergencies are terrible. And you want to do it safely too. You want to avoid things like scams. So think about those behaviors we talked about at the beginning. Are you making good or bad decisions with your money, and why? What are the values? Think about where you are now. Needs met, crisis, do you feel confident? From there, take action. Budget, work on a financial plan, talk to a financial planner. Savings, credit report checks, make sure you have enough insurance, do things that are going to mitigate or avoid risk and protect yourself. Use our coffee platform to continue your learning or share it with others, finfit.coffeetime.ca. Speak to a financial coach, an advisor, a credit counselor if you're dealing with debt. Ask questions. Do not feel intimidated or afraid to do so, especially in a bank scenario. Talk to people all the time. Feel empowered. You are allowed to ask those questions, so please do. And lastly, don't forget to reflect back, review your budget, your savings, your goals, your sub goals, because things will change. Now, with all that said, as we wrap up, those are a lot of great things you could do, right? We talked about a lot of great actions you can take, but there's one other choice you could always make when it comes to especially financial topics. You can do nothing. That is absolutely a choice. Doing nothing is something you could do. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. So if something caught you off guard today, you didn't know anything about, especially if it's around budgeting or debt, or financial emergencies or savings or credit reports, take some action. A lot of stuff doesn't take a ton of work to get going on, and it is really about that routine. But if you are doing these things, keep doing what you're doing. You're going to keep finding success. So hopefully that helps you get motivated with it. With that, thank you very much for paying attention to me and listening to my voice for so long. Weiting, it was a pleasure working with you today. And last but not least, I do have our information here. I do have a survey set up. It looks like it might be appearing a little light on the screen, but my email is there. Survey, if you're able to scan the QR code, we can also put in the chat. Love to get your feedback about today's session. Our finfit.coffeetime.ca, the coffee free money management tools and resources and learning opportunities, the credit score links, and also last but not least, to talk to a credit counselor, 844-394-9115. And again, the QR code, if you scan that, you're going to head over to the survey. It takes like a minute or two to complete. I appreciate you completing that for me. And with that, I know we're at pretty much 8:30. And if there's any further questions, I'm happy to stick around if we have.
Yes, you got it. Folks, if you have to drop, feel free to drop. Thank you so much for joining Robbie and I. I always love seeing repeated individuals coming into these learning sessions, Robbie. So I see several tonight joining us. Oh, super thankful for returners.
Awesome.
And to the new people who joined. Okay, so for those who are staying, I know that there are some questions in the chat. Let's answer some. So Peter asked, can we get the recording? Peter, I have recorded it and I will clean it up before I post it inside the Openroom.ca next month. In April, what we're hoping to come out is an authenticated experience into Openroom's inside Openroom experience. So it'll be posted inside there when you create an account, and you'll get to watch some of our previous masterclasses that have happened, okay? So not immediately, but eventually next month. All right. Phone companies say they do soft checks. Robbie, is that true? Or any entity that does a credit check, will it always be a hard check?
Yeah, interesting situation. So phone bills and so cell phone bill, internet provider, even your digital cable, that does end up appearing on your credit report in most situations for a while now. I've personally seen it. They will do a check. If they say it's a soft check, that's what it's supposed to be. It is possible that a soft check can be listed, especially if it's from a business. It can be listed on your checks on your credit report, but it just might not affect your score. But if they tell you it's a soft check, and if you were to go and check your credit report and you see a drop, it could be from you opening that account, because that's a form of borrowing. That's how they view, your new service. So that might be the reason why. But if you experience an issue where there's something off, you can always call the credit bureaus and ask them. But if a provider, if you've authorized them to do a check and they say it's a soft check, won't affect your score, that should be what it is.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. We have another question from Glenn. How can we get something removed that is fraud or false from credit reports or inaccurate court filings?
Yeah, great question. So if you do check your credit report and you find an error or something that should no longer be there, or whatever it might be, that's why documentation is so important. Have the documentation to support your claim. And then you would contact the credit bureaus and you would file a dispute with them. You call them up online. They also have a dispute filing process. Now that's one option. That's really the primary option that you'll officially always hear. The other option, which is just as effective, but not always something people think of doing, but it can work, is if, let's say, that issue is there's a credit card in someone else's name and it's on my credit report and I want to get rid of it. you could call that financial institution and say, hey, this is on my credit bureau report. It's an error. I want it removed. It clearly belongs to someone else, or it's fraudulent. If the financial institution removes it, it's definitely getting removed all the same. So either way, they'll get investigated. If I were dealing with it personally, I'd probably try both. If it was something that I thought was pretty simple or a simple error, probably go to the financial institution. But in all those scenarios, all those options, document what you're doing, who you're talking to, make sure you have copies of whatever the error is, and if you have evidence to show that it's not, it shouldn't be there, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. What I can comment on here, having a partnership with Equifax and eventually TransUnion as we're doing this credit reporting component, is that every aggregator of the data, for example, Openroom being an aggregator, is that we need to have a dispute process that allows you to dispute something like inaccurate filings or misinterpretation of certain dollar amounts coming in. So just wanted to put that out there. Okay, so yeah, as Robbie said,
There you go.
Probably easier to contact the specific provider that is doing the reporting into Equifax and TransUnion, but at the same time, also dispute it on the other side.
Yeah, it might not be possible to reach wherever this came from. It might be hard to identify. There are a whole bunch of reasons. But by, as per the regulations of the credit bureaus, they have to investigate if you identify an error, and they will have to come to you with a response with either, no, we're keeping it here because of this reason or that, or yes, we are going to remove it. They'll have to give you a response. I believe it's within like 2 business weeks. So like 10 business days or something like that. Might be 3.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks,
It's
Glenn.
a little bit more complicated, but it actually was an error from the court. The lawsuit was dismissed by the judge. So the person, he or she, we don't know who it was, instead of put dismissal, they actually put the reverse of dismissal. And it actually contradicts on the actual credit checks and whatever. It contradicts each other. Like one says dismissed, one says it's on. And we've had problems for years over this. We have to give all the lawyers and people all these papers every 10 years. But it's a disaster because I was actually thinking to go to court and file court papers to get that removed from the court.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, if I may, like in that scenario, and that is the exact scenario I was referring to, it might not be possible, or it might be much harder to go directly to the source of that information. If you have documentation to say that is not the case, like you have the legal documentation.
Yeah.
If you file a dispute with the credit bureau, say, hey, this is on here. I have documentation prove that it's a very different scenario and it should be reviewed and disputed, et cetera, et cetera. They'll ask for the documentation. Just make sure you keep copies for yourself, and they have to investigate. And remember, you'll have to initiate that with both credit bureaus if it's on both. Right?
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of papers. I feel bad for them to have to look through it, but I'm going to probably give it to them one day.
Or they'll tell you what exactly they need. Like if there's a certain summary that says this was dismissed, that maybe that's all.
Oh no, we have all those papers.
We
have the actual judge dismissing.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. But it was just the clerk literally, instead of saying dismissed, put it in as pending.
Yeah.
And it created a problem for literally, I think it's been 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So and our lawyers told us not even to bother, whatever. I was so mad I was going to go to court and get my daughters to help me collate everything and whatever. But our lawyer said don't even bother, because it doesn't affect us per se, because all we have to do is every time, if we get a mortgage or whatever, we show the banks or the institutions these papers, they're fine with it.
But it's an extra task.
It's more bothering me. So it's okay. It's better just to go directly to the credit bureau.
Yeah, I would, especially with the timing, depending on where it's listed, it might actually be off the credit report now. because there is a limitation to how long things are listed on there.
Okay.
Depending on where's, like if it's in the public record area, it may not be removed for longer.
It is in the public record. It
Yeah.
says through
So
our company.
yeah. Okay. So in that case, I would absolutely initiate dispute, and they'll have to investigate. And you know, the reality is you have legal documents to say what you're trying to prove. So you have
Oh,
a
yeah,
really
yeah,
you
yeah.
have you have a good scenario. Not everyone has that good amount of documentation. So
No, we have all
look
the
at it from a positive direction, I suppose.
No, it's
But-
just very irritating.
Oh,
It really
absolutely.
is, Glenn.
Yeah.
Like if I could add a little bit of commentary on that as a data aggregator, that Openroom is trying to be, when we're thinking about how these flows need to be, we need to be very, very intentional on every step of that flow. Right? Because if you think about it, someone like you know what it feels like to be impacted by a wrong submission into your credit score or credit report in this case. And that hurts and that's irritating. And so from our perspective, it took us so long to even think through everything, and we're still not ready to launch it yet because we're just checking all of the, crossing all the T's, dotting all of the I's. We don't want to get this wrong. We know that this is important.
One click could be detrimental.
Exactly. Because once that credit hits the score, if someone did it fraudulently, like for example, a landlord was extremely mad at the tenant and they submitted fraudulent docs into Openroom, and then we suddenly send that data back to the credit bureaus, it will be on there. It will have impacted. You can't go back and change a score, is what we were told. So this is why we have to think through everything, and we're nervous about it, but we feel that we are doing right by our community members and all of you because we're taking extreme care in it.
Mm-hmm. It does.
I think it's going to help.
Time.
I personally think it will help both landlords and tenants.
Yeah,
it's for both parties.
Yeah,
because a tenant that has a great credit score and is doing great deserves to be recognized. And you know, vice versa.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and a lot of what I was presenting today, it really does go both ways. Like as much as we often talk about, you know, landlords want good tenants who are going to pay because they're in the property and everything, for sure. But a tenant wants a good landlord. Like I talk about in sessions how it's so common now for a landlord who's responsible to check the credit report and score. And I say nowadays it's so commonplace, you should probably watch out if a landlord's not doing it, because that might identify a landlord that's not so great, right?
Yeah, good stuff, Robbie. Another thing, Robbie, that you told me is that as a general guideline, each of us should probably be checking our credit scores each month, right? Just to like have a benchmark, like pull it from a free service.
Not every month, but at least every 6 months. I think what I told you was I wouldn't check it more than once a month because it only updates once a month. Some people tell me like, oh, I check it every week. I'm like, it doesn't update that often. So if you want to do that and that's fun for you, that's fine. It's a soft check, won't affect anything. Maybe it's good to have that knowledge that's great. But if you're looking to verify the information, and that's kind of the idea, once every 6 months, both credit reports, you should be good. And you know, now everyone here definitely knows how to do it with the soft check. Like those links on the screen will take you right to the Equifax and TransUnion soft checks, which is new, by the way, that those features, thanks to the province of Quebec, mind you, those features were added online in the last couple of years for the first time ever. It used to only be by mail. You had to mail in a form and then you get the information. Now we have an online option.
Good. Okay, apologies. Don't check it every month because it might not actually have changed.
Unless it's fun for you. Yeah.
Right. Be aware of it because I mean, things could pop up on there at any point. So
I would say
quoted you there. Okay.
No
we do have
problem.
one more chat
Sure.
question here. How long usually does it take for a financial institution to remove wrong name from my credit?
So I guess like an error on the credit report. It's a great question. You know, especially the credit bureaus, they have to respond relatively quick, like within a month. We know that. In terms of getting items removed, if they agree and they identify the error, it can be very quick. But there's really no exact science to what that timing would be. So it either way, like we think to your point, like once the credit score is affected, it's still going to take time to rebuild it. First and foremost, you want everything on there. If it belongs to you, then that's what should be there. Otherwise, you want it fixed. But after that, it will take time to for the credit score to sort of balance out and recover. And that in that case, we're talking about months. And just making sure we're doing good credit behavior, borrowing money, paying it back, staying on budget, staying with low balances. Those are all really good credit building strategies. But feeling confident in doing that too is number one, avoiding that bad debt. So yeah, it really depends on the scenario, but if you identify an error with a credit card and you have good evidence sort of back you up and documentation, great. If it's to the point where if you have like a really straightforward thing and they're not being responsive, it's the point that's where people end up going to different media outlets and saying, hey, I need help, the bank's not being responsive, and then suddenly they respond when you go to the bank. So that's why there's so many stories like that out there. So that's an angle you can go with too.
Yes. All right. One other question. When landlord does the check on a tenant, is it a soft check for the tenant or a hard check? Anna, it is a hard check. If a landlord goes into the credit bureaus and does the pull, but that is not the case if the tenant does it on their own, right? That would be a soft check and provides it to the landlord. And then there's also the case mentioned earlier about single key having a feature where they are sharing the pulled report of one, and you can share it with other landlords, and you cannot manipulate it of any sort. So that has been pretty interesting to me. And then does it influence a tenant's score? Yes, it would influence a score if it's a hard check.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good questions, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question. We got people thinking, that's for sure. That's great.
Yeah. What's super fascinating though, last comment for everybody, is that even just the concept of scores. Like if we actually think about what is a 799 as a score versus an 800 or 801, what is the difference? I mean, I
Not
care
really
if
anything.
I want one, but really, does it have any influence on the way I operate, or should it? I don't know. It's just a philosophical thought for everybody as we leave the evening tonight.
Yeah, it's a good point.
All right.
Yeah, but good to keep tabs on it. And if anyone does experience any issues, they're welcome to email me and help guide them along.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you've learned at least one new concept. Please consider subscribing or giving us a thumbs up so we keep sharing high-quality educational courses on Openroom University. Check out our other videos to make sure you stay informed. If you've got feedback or just general ideas for my team at Openroom.ca, please send it to us at hello@openroom.ca. Cheers to a transparent and connected rental ecosystem.